Ficus Lyrata, commonly known as the fiddle leaf fig, is a species of flowering plants in the fig and mulberry family Moraceae. It is native to Western Africa, where it grows in lowland tropical forests. It can grow up to 49 feet tall. That's gigantic. And we have this in our homes. So stay tuned for some essential tips on repotting and caring for your fiddle leaf fig. So first things first, let's talk repotting. You are going to need a pot that's about 2 to 5 inches larger in diameter than your original pot. And you want to make sure that it has some good drainage holes. You'll also want to use some good draining soil because fiddle leaf fig do not like to sit in boggy soil. So a good draining soil is essential for your fiddle leaf fig. And if you are doing this indoors like I am, because I am doing this in late fall, you might want to use a tarp to protect your floors. I did not prepare for that, so I don't have a tarp, so I'll have to sweep and mop the floors after I'm done with this chore because that's going to be a messy chore. As you can see, I have this fiddle leaf fig in this basket over here, and that's just to hide the plastic pot that I have it in. This fiddle leaf fig has been in the same pot since the moment I bought it, and it definitely needs to be repotted. So let's talk about some signs that you need to repot your fiddle leaf fig. Over my fiddle leaf fig, I have this moss just to give it a better appearance, and I'm going to take it out so that we can take a better look at the roots. And I haven't been a good mom to my fiddle leaf fig. I'm letting it dry out, and that's really bad, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But if you look at your fiddle leaf fig and the roots on it are circling around the exterior of the pot, the outer perimeter of the pot, and you start seeing the roots protruding from the top of the pot. And then if you look at the bottom as well, and if you see roots coming out of the bottom, I don't see a lot of roots coming out of the bottom, just a little bit, but these are signs that you should be repotting your fiddle leaf fig. And you want to keep your plant in a comparable size pot for its roots. So what I mean by that is if your roots are about this big, you don't want to choose a pot that's this large, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up with super moist soil that is not going to dry out in time before the roots start rotting. And root rot is a serious thing in fiddle leaf fig. In fact, one of the most causes of fiddle leaf fig die-off is root rot. So to prevent that, you want to choose the right size pot for the right size plant. So the way how I think about it when it comes to the timing for repotting your plant is really you want to go with the root size of your plant and if it's outgrown its pot or not. Some may say that spring is the ideal time for repotting your plant, but when we think about it, we transplant our plants in the spring and in the fall. And technically this is still fall, so I can still do this because in the winter, that is actually when the plants are putting a lot of root growth on. Even though their foliage is not actively growing, their roots are still actively growing. And because of that, you want to give your plants the best chance at survival, and repotting them when they say they need it is definitely going to help with that, and it's going to help their root growth. So whether I am planting edible plants or non-edible plants, I always like to start with an organic soil. That's my preference because non-organic fertilizers can contain a lot of salts in them and they can ruin the soil. And soil health is still important in your pots. You want to give them the best soil in order for these plants to thrive. So by starting off with a good soil, you are definitely going to give them a jump start. I have already placed some good organic potting soil in here, and I'm just going to create some space for this fiddle leaf fig to be nestled in this spot over here. Now, if the stem on your fiddle leaf fig is not sturdy, you want to stake it. And to do that, you want to choose like a really good sturdy stake, maybe like a tomato stake. I use the plastic ones. You can use a metal one as well. And you want to push it as close to the stalk or to the trunk as possible, but you also want to make sure that you are not injuring the trunk. And you want to push the stake as far deep as you can go, and then you want to use a rubber coated tie to tie your stake to your fiddle leaf fig, because rubber coated ties are not going to injure your plants, and that stake is going to give support to your fiddle leaf fig while you are transplanting it. And if your fiddle leaf fig tends to sway to one direction or another, that stake is going to help it stay in the shape that you want it to. So now we are going to take this fiddle leaf fig out of its pot, if I can, and I'm going to reuse this pot to plant my other fiddle leaf fig that is over here. There we go. Okay. So the timing on repotting this fiddle leaf fig is perfect because I don't see roots coming out of the bottom, but the top over here, you can see they're starting to circle. So what I can do without creating too much mess is I'm going to actually take some soil out of here. What I need to do is take these roots and just break up their root memory a little bit so that they're not girdling around the tree. And girdling is basically the effect of the trees wrapping around itself, around the trunk, and that eventually can kill a tree, especially if the tree is growing outside. And if you plant a tree in the ground and you have the roots going round and round around the trunk, that can eventually cause the root to die because the roots are going to grow super large and they start choking the trunk of the tree. So I'm just going to pull on them a little bit and see if I can just get them to kind of just loosen up and stop twisting around the tree. And I'm gently pulling on them. I'm trying to see where these roots are going so that I don't do too much damage on them. Now, root pruning is something that is actually done in transplanting large trees, and they root prune the trees before they transplant them in order to cause root growth and cause the tree to get healthier and stronger before the transplant happens. And this way the tree has less transplant shock when it's time to transplant it, especially when it comes to large trees. Okay, so I'm just taking the roots and I'm following along to see where they're coming from and where they are going, because I can see that they are just wrapping around this tree like crazy, and we don't want that. Look at this root. Woo! It's going on forever. That is a big root. By doing this, you're not harming your tree, you're actually helping it. So I'm just going to take out a little more soil because I'm having a hard time placing this tree in the pot. I want to kind of give it about half an inch or so at the top for watering, and if I want to top it with mulch or something like that so that it would look pretty, I would have that space. Because I'm also going to cover the top with a little bit of soil, because as you can see, the roots are kind of coming off the surface of the soil, and that's probably not a bad thing since fiddle leaf figs don't want their roots to sit in moisture, but that is the surface of the soil, and the surface of the soil typically dries out a lot faster than the bottom part. So I think that's okay. And I want to place the fig in the center of the pot. You want to make sure it's level. I think it is. So now I can start adding some more soil back in, and I'm going to fill around the fig with soil. I am making quite a bit of mess. Perfect. One thing to keep in mind when you are repotting the fiddle leaf fig is you don't want to go up higher than what the trunk was sitting at. Because if the soil covers part of the trunk, you could rot the trunk. And you don't want to do that because we love our fiddle leaf figs and we want to protect them. So just make sure that you are placing your soil level at the same level the trunk was planted at. You can cover the roots, but just keep the trunk uncovered. And I got quite a bit of cleanup to do.
Hey, stay here.
This right here is my baby. And I took this cutting last year from this tree over here. And this cutting now has put on tons of roots and it is ready to be transplanted. In all honesty, this should have been transplanted about 6 months ago, but I really wanted to film this on video, and because I was so busy with gardening outside, I did not have the chance to do that. But now that we are transitioning into winter, it is the perfect time for me to do that and to show you guys how this fiddle leaf fig cutting has done, and the transplanting process or the potting process. Okay. So let's look at the roots, shall we? These are the roots. Ah! Okay, I'm gonna go wash my eye. I got the water from the fiddle leaf fig in my eye. Trial number 2. So this is now ready to be potted, finally, after all this waiting time. This poor fiddle leaf fig. And because it was sitting up against the wall, because I didn't have anything to stake it up, you can see it's kind of formed in a funny shape. But that will be fixed by rotating the tree every other day or so that the tree can receive light from all directions, and it will correct itself and the leaves will naturally turn towards the light. For this tree, I'm going to use the same pot that the original tree that I took the cutting from was in. Because this fiddle leaf fig doesn't really have that much root to it, if I were to choose any bigger of a pot, there's a possibility that this fiddle leaf fig is going to rot. And the reason why I'm choosing this pot is because I do want this fiddle leaf fig to put on a lot of root growth, and I have to be super careful on how to water it because that is a lot of soil, a lot more than the roots. But I'm hoping that after it gets potted up that it's going to get stimulated into producing a lot more roots. And I will be watering it with some rooting hormone in order to encourage some more of the root growth to happen. Because I feel that if I don't do that it's not going to be putting tons of roots on, because it's going to go through a shock from going from the water to the soil. So by watering it with some rooting hormone, and I will put a link to the rooting hormone that I use in the description box below, that is going to encourage some more root growth on it. All right, so let's get this baby potted. This is definitely going to need a stake because the trunk on it, or it's more of a stem right now or a branch, is super spindly. It's not as strong as the mother plant, obviously. Right now I don't have a stake with me, but after I pot it up, eventually I will be getting a stake for it, the appropriate size stake, and placing it with it so that it can provide it with some support, because the trunks on fiddle leaf figs tend to be a little bit weak, and I think if they were outside they would probably be stronger. Because of the action of the wind hitting them, it would cause the trunks to strengthen. Basically, it's the same concept as if you are growing some seedlings indoors. You want to put a fan on them to strengthen their stems. I think in theory that would probably be the same for the fiddle leaf figs that grow outdoors. I'm going to place some soil in the pot before I place it in here because I can't place it too deep into the pot. If you have a pot that is slightly deeper than the roots that are growing, that's actually going to be better, because the roots would have a more chance to put on some more downward growth. So because I don't want all the roots to be smushed in the same place, I'm going to raise it gently to the level that I want to plant it at, and I'm going to gently add the soil in so that the roots can just kind of naturally be planted into the soil without all of them being clustered together. And let me bring you a little bit closer to show you what I mean. I'm going to hope for the best and hope that you can see. So what I mean by this is right here is where the tree is going to be planted at. So at this level right here. So I want this to be about 1/2 inch or so below the rim of the pot, about here. And I think that's pretty good right there. And as you can see, the roots are kind of dangling down into the pot, and I can even bury some of them that are long. I can remove some of the soil so that they can kind of sit deeper into the soil. And then I could take the soil and start burying while I'm holding the tree at the level that I want to plant it at. I think, let's make sure I'm planting it at the correct level. All right, there we go. So now I can start adding the soil while I hold it at that level, making sure it stays at the correct level. And I want to also make sure that it's in the center of the pot so that the roots can grow evenly in the pot. And if you can disperse the roots a little more, that's even better to prevent girdling, as we have talked about earlier. I'm going to see if I can, it's getting a little tricky over here. And every now I'm just checking to make sure that it stays at that same level. I don't think I have enough soil. The soil is already super moist, so I'm not going to water this fiddle leaf fig. I'm going to give it maybe a week or so to dry out a little bit. And then once it's ready for time to be watered, then I'm going to get some of the rooting hormone, dilute it in some water, and water the fiddle leaf fig with it. I'm going to require some assistance here. I grabbed some black gold potting mix because I ran out of the other mix. This black gold mix over here is a little more dry than the other one, so I'm going to need to water slightly, not that much. I think I will mix the rooting hormone and water it just a little bit with that because it's not enough. So I need to grab some more soil actually, because this pot apparently is bigger than I thought and it needs a lot more soil, and it definitely needs a stake. So I'm gonna quickly grab a stake as well so that I can support it, because right now it's just going to boop, lean over. This topsoil is super dry. I got a stake also, so I'm going to stick the stake over here. The stake is not super tall. I couldn't find my tomato stakes, and we are going to stick it into the soil. This should be enough just for now, for a short time. And I'm using these rubber coated tomato ties, and we are going to position the tree as straight as we think it's going to be. And then we are going to take one of these ties over here, tie it at the bottom to the stake, to stake it and twist it. Super easy. And then another one at the top. And just like that, we got this fiddle leaf fig all potted up. All I have to do is just water it and give it some of the rooting hormone, and make sure to rotate it every day, I think, not every other day, because its shape is pretty wonky. This side looks pretty good, but if you look at it from this side, that's not what we want. I'm gonna clean this mess and I'll be right back. So these babies are all potted up and they are looking gorgeous. Now let's talk about some care tips for your Ficus Lyrata. The first thing is light. Fiddle leaf figs thrive on indirect bright light. You'll want to place them near a window. As you can see over here, I have this fiddle leaf fig right here, this baby one, next to this window, and this one next to it on the opposite side where there's another window. This side of the house is a west facing window, so it does get some afternoon sunlight. And when it does, I just come here and I shut the shades during the period where the sun is at its hottest so that the leaves don't scorch. You want to avoid direct sunlight because it will scorch your leaves. And if you have north-facing windows, that would even be better. So just make sure to not place them in a south-facing window, because south-facing windows are going to receive sunlight for most of the day. And if your house has a lot of direct sunlight, you want to place it maybe in a place that is away from the window where it's not going to receive that direct sunlight. Or you can also place some sheer curtains on your windows to protect it during those hot sun hours, especially in the afternoon sunlight. The second tip is watering. And when it comes to fiddle leaf figs, from my experience, I have found that they do not want to dry out. I know some people say that they want to dry out, but I have found that that's not the case. So what you want to do is you want to check the first top layer of the soil, so about 2 to 3 inches deep. And if your pot is bigger, you want to check even deeper, because the deeper the pot, the more water it can hold, especially if you have just potted it up like I have. Then those roots are still not going to be developed. There's going to be a lot of soil at the bottom of the pot that does not have any roots in it, and that can cause root rot. So to prevent that, you want to, if you have a pot about the same size of my pot over here, you want to have about a third of the pot maybe or so dry out, depending on where your roots are at, before you water it, because this is a fairly large pot. And if I water it when the 2 to 3 inches of the soil are dry, then I might cause some root rot in my fiddle leaf fig. You want to keep it on a consistent schedule of watering if possible. As I said earlier, I haven't been a good plant mom to my fiddle leaf fig over here, and I have let it dry out a little bit. And when it comes to drying out, actually, let me turn this plant around. So if you notice over here, this leaf right here is dry. And when your fiddle leaf fig dries out, you are going to notice drying spots on your leaves. And this plant came this way. I bought it on sale from Home Depot. It was for $17 and I thought it was a steal. So I couldn't resist but getting it. And I'm so happy that I made that decision when I made it, because these plants can be super expensive. But anyways, you can easily cut that part out if you happen to let your fiddle leaf dry out. I just didn't bother, and I kind of, because I rotate it every day and I kind of have that spot, that part of it hidden behind a couch, so you can't really see that part, I didn't bother about cutting it. But this is what you can do. I find that more ugly, personally. If you have a small dry spot like this one, that's not a big deal. There, and you can fix it, tinker with it until it looks the way how you want it to. Like, I think I could just cut this part over here and that would probably make it look better. There are a lot of dry spots on this leaf. This leaf looks like it's going to drop off pretty soon, which leads me to another point, and that is, if your fiddle leaf fig is dropping its leaves, that means it is stressed out. You might be experiencing either drying, you're letting it dry out too much, or it could be experiencing some root rot. So you want to check and see, lift up your fiddle leaf fig from the pot, inspect the roots, see if there is any sign of rot. If you have a lot of moisture, obviously, maybe that is a sign of rot. And if your fiddle leaf fig is dry, then maybe that's a sign of dryness. And they can also face some bug issues like scale, mealybugs. I've never, thank God, I've never faced any of these on my fiddle leaf fig, so I'm just super blessed and happy that I have never experienced that on it. But if you have, you can treat it with some neem oil, and you want to make sure, again, to not put it in the sun, especially, 1, fiddle leaf figs do not like direct sunlight, and 2, if you have neem oil on any of your plants and you apply it during the heat of the day, during when the sun is shining on it, that's going to fry your plant, whatever it may be. So you want to avoid that. And naturally, because you are placing it in indirect bright light, it's not going to be affected by that. You can also use products like Bonide. They have specific products that are targeted to these things. And there are a lot of good companies out there that have products that can, organic products that can battle these things. So that's one thing when it comes to that. And also, if you face any leaves dropping, you want to make sure to remove them from your fiddle leaf fig. And it could also be, that's another thing, Maybe it is stressed because it has bugs on it. That's what I was trying to get to, but I didn't. So inspecting your plant for bugs can be also a good thing to make sure that this is not the purpose why it's dropping its leaves. Just lift the leaves up because the insects usually hide at the bottom surface of the leaves and they suck the sap of the leaves. That ends up stressing the plant and possibly killing it. That leads us to our next tip, which is fertilizing. You want to keep your fiddle leaf fig on a fertilizing schedule from spring all the way through fall, and that is during the active growing season, because that is when your plant is putting on its foliar growth. I like to use indoor organic fertilizer. My favorite is Espoma's organic indoor liquid fertilizer. I have tried another liquid fertilizer, but I did not like it for indoor plants, and I did not see the same result as I did with Espoma. I truly believe that their product is superior to other products, and I do recommend it highly. And I'm not sponsored by them or anything of the sort. I'm just mentioning this because I have gotten the best results out of their products. And when it comes to winter time, you want to stop fertilizing your plant unless your plant is stressed out. If you notice that your plant is a little stressed and maybe a bit of a boost of fertilizer is going to help it, then you want to give it fertilizer maybe once a month or once every other month during the winter season, just to give it that bit of a boost. And you might want to focus that fertilizer on the root growth rather than on the foliar growth, because during the winter season, plants are focusing on growing their roots. So look for fertilizers that focus on root growth rather than foliar growth. And the next tip is temperature. Fiddle leaf fig, as I said, grow in a tropical climate, which means they like warm temperatures. So the ideal temperature is between 65 to 80 Fahrenheit, and that's where your fiddle leaf fig is going to be happy. You don't want to place it outside in the winter even if you live in the south, because it can get pretty cold in the south in the winter. And in the summer, if you are placing it outside, just make sure that it is in an indirect sunlight, because you know, when it comes to rainforests, they have a lot of foliar growth, upper and lower growth, and the fiddle leaf fig, because it likes the shade, is going to be one of those plants that's going to be in the lower layer, where it's going to be hiding under some other plants. So it's going to be a little bit cooler than the rest of the plants, and it's going to receive more shade than the top surface layer of the plants. Which leads us to the next tip, which is humidity control. Fiddle leaf figs, as I have said, grow in a tropical climate naturally, and they like humidity. So you want to make sure that you are providing them with that humidity, especially in the winter. In the summer, if you live in a humid environment, that's not going to be a problem. We live in a pretty humid environment. But when it comes to the winter, when the heat kicks on, the house gets drier, and my throat is feeling pretty dry right now, so I can only imagine how these fiddle leaf figs are feeling. This area that I have my fiddle leaf figs in is right next to the kitchen, and there's a lot of humidity that happens in the kitchen, so I don't necessarily need to do much about that. But what you can do is you can place a humidifier in the room where you have your fiddle leaf figs in to provide that humidity. I also have misted my fiddle leaf figs with water, and I have found that also to help, but you want to be consistent, and you want to mist it about 2 to 3 times a day to kind of give it some moisture to its leaves and simulate that mist that it was going to receive. But really the best thing that you could do for it is to place a humidifier if your house gets super dry in the winter, and if you live in a dry area in the summer as well. And my last tip is cleaning the leaves, something that I haven't done in ages. So the reason I will probably be doing that right after this video. So the reason why you want to clean your leaves, the leaves on the fiddle leaf fig, is because the dust buildup on the leaves is going to block the light, and it's going to stop the plant from receiving that energy that it needs from the light. So by cleaning the leaves, that plant, your fiddle leaf fig, can photosynthesize better, and it's going to be a lot healthier if you do so. I mean, I haven't cleaned it and it is healthy, but again, it's not like super dusty. So you can, if you live in a super dusty place, you might want to do this more than I do it. One more thing I forgot to mention is that if you are cutting the leaves on your Fiddle Leaf Fig, or you're taking some of the leaves off, there's something important that you need to know, and that is that Fiddle Leaf Fig have a sap in them, and it's a white substance, and that sap can be skin irritant. So you want to take caution when you handle your Fiddle Leaf Fig, and you want to wash your hands right after if the sap touches you, so that you don't end up with irritation on your skin. So now if you look closely at this Fiddle Leaf Fig, you'll notice that it has formed multiple branches. This Fiddle Leaf Fig used to be a stick just like this one over here. And if you want to know how I got it to branch out this way, you can click on this video over here.